Mac versus PC is one of the oldest rivalries within the tech industry. Windows has dominated this race in terms of market share and will likely continue to do so moving forward. But I think Apple's share of this market is about to grow substantially over the next decade. Now, many Apple fanboys will claim that it's about time given that Macs were always better than PCs, but I don't think that's exactly true. We don't have to look that far back to see how limiting Macs were in the past. For example, remember how MacBooks only had USB-C ports? Or how Apple shipped unreliable butterfly keyboards just to make the keyboard millimeters thinner? Or the time that Apple recalled 432,000 MacBook Pros because they would catch on fire? Clearly, Macs haven't always been perfect. But ever since Apple ditched Intel and released their M1 series of products, I think Apple's offerings have become more appealing than ever before. And I'm not the only one who thinks this either, as their annual growth has far outpaced the PC market. Last year, annual sales for PCs grew by 14.6%, while annual sales for the Mac grew by 28.3%, or nearly 2 times as much. Also, this growth wasn't just amongst rich Americans, the laptop market, or liberal college students. This statistic was within the global PC market. Considering this, I don't think you'd be surprised to hear that Apple hit record Mac revenue numbers, pulling in over $10 billion within a single quarter. So here's why Mac adoption is going through the roof and why Mac's market share may grow as high as the iPhone's market share. Likely one of the biggest factors driving up Mac adoption recently is that Apple has become more competitive than ever before when it comes to value. Now, this may be a bit confusing as we see Apple continuously churn out extremely expensive products. After all, they do sell a $50,000 PC and a $5,000 monitor. But how many people do you really think buy these products? The top-end Mac Pro is literally equivalent to the average American's annual salary. And while you may think that ripping off customers is Apple's entire business plan, if you look deeper into these products, you'll know that this isn't 100% true, given that Apple doesn't even take these products that seriously. One of my favorite tests to do when it comes to expensive Apple products is to see how long it takes them to ship it to me. Today is March 27th, 2022, and if I order the Apple Pro stand right now, it'll take until April 8th for it to arrive, or 12 days. Meanwhile, if I order the Mac Mini, it'll arrive in just 2 days, or I could pick it up in store today. Now, if Apple was really trying to sell the Pro stand seriously, it wouldn't take them 12 days to deliver it. I'm literally spending $1,000 on a monitor stand. You would think that they would at least spend some effort in fast delivery. But they don't, because they don't take the Pro stand seriously. All these products that people love to make fun of, like the Pro stand, Apple Wheels, and the Mac Pro, are all headline products. While a very small number of people will actually buy these products and may even find them valuable, the primary purpose of these products is not to generate sales, but to generate headlines like this. Such headlines serve two purposes, which are building exclusivity and price anchoring. The first purpose needs no explanation. When consumers constantly see such outrageously priced products, they start to associate Apple with exclusivity and desirability. And in terms of price anchoring, when people see a $50,000 computer, they'll start to think that a $2,000 or $3,000 computer is relatively not that expensive. If we put such products aside though, we'll see that Apple is extremely competitive in terms of price and value. For example, in terms of desktops, the M1 Mac Mini retails for $700, and you can actually get it for $669 at Amazon. Gary from The Everyday Dad thinks that the Mac Mini is the best value computer you can buy on the market.
M1 Mac Mini is literally the best computer that you can buy for the money.
If you disagree, I challenge you to comment down below a desktop computer that's more portable, easy to use, and offers more performance for the same price as the M1 Mac Mini. If we look at Apple's MacBook lineup, it's exactly the same case there as well. While the MacBook Pros aren't the easiest to justify for the average person, just take a look at the MacBook Air. It starts at $1,000, which makes it the same price as an iPhone 13 Pro. And if you're a student, you can actually get it for $900. Now again, you can find plenty of laptops for $300 to $500. But when you compare the MacBook Air to other laptops that are priced at $1,000, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to find a laptop that offers more value per dollar. So while Apple still doesn't sell the super cheap entry-level products, the entry-level products that Apple does sell are basically impossible to beat thanks to the M1. Moving on, the second reason that Macs have been doing better than ever before is their synergy. There's of course the Apple ecosystem, which is getting harder and harder to escape by the day, but I'm not even talking about that. Rather, I'm talking about hardware synergy. One of the top reasons for the success of the iPhone is that Apple is able to leverage so much more power out of the same hardware. iPhones consistently tend to have less RAM, less computing power, and less graphics power than their Android counterparts. But despite this, in terms of real-world performance, iPhones often match, if not beat, these Android counterparts thanks to their hardware and software optimization. The lack of such optimization was one of the biggest shortfalls of the Mac, but that's no longer the case. Of course, there's the M1, but that's not the only factor. Take Apple's unified memory for example. Several reports and reviews have suggested that Macs with unified memory not only match, but outperform systems with twice as much regular RAM. Also, it's not just Apple that's leveraging this optimized hardware. Some of the biggest software developers are finally taking the time to optimize their software for Mac. Adobe, for example, claims that their apps are now 80% faster on M1 Macs, and looking forward, this synergy should only improve as Apple bridges the gap between their iOS devices and their Mac devices. Historically, developers have not wanted to develop software for Mac because it's always been such a niche market. Something that's not a niche market though is the iOS App Store. And with the introduction of Apple Silicon on Macs, software development for iOS and macOS has basically become identical. According to Apple themselves, most iOS apps require no modification to run on Apple Silicon. Now, this doesn't mean that Supercell is going to develop Clash Royale for the Mac. But what this does mean though is that software companies who primarily deal with Windows can leverage the large base of iOS developers to efficiently port over software to Mac. So, in the coming years, Apple will not only have some of the most value-packed hardware, but some of the most optimized software. And given that this combination is what allowed them to perform so well within the mobile market, I'd bet that it'll play out pretty well within the PC market as well. While Apple's synergy and value are great if you choose the right products, we can't ignore that Macs still have a few major pitfalls, starting with a lack of repairability and upgradability. At the end of last year, Apple announced their self-service repair program, which promised to allow consumers to repair their own iPhones and Macs with genuine Apple parts. But with the recent release of the Mac Studio, it's not clear how true Apple will stay to this promise. If you guys haven't heard yet, if you crack open the Mac Studio, you'll actually find that the storage device is removable and replaceable. However, what Luke Mayani found was that if you switch the slot in which the storage device is placed, or swap the storage device with another storage device with a different capacity, the Mac Studio refuses to boot. Clearly, there's some sort of software lock and/or encryption that prevents users from changing the storage, which is quite stupid. I have no idea why Apple doesn't just let people swap the storage, because here's the thing. I bet 95% of Apple customers won't want to take apart a brand new computer and try to upgrade the storage. So even if Apple allowed this option, these guys would just pay Apple for the extra storage anyway. So it's not like Apple would lose out on much revenue. In the meantime, they can avoid all the criticism they receive regarding lack of repairability. The second biggest shortfall of Macs is sort of related to the first point, which is their base storage options. While the Mac Mini and MacBook Air offer great value in terms of performance, they don't offer great value in terms of storage. These machines should offer a minimum of 512 GB of storage, and their higher-end Mac Studios and MacBook Pro should offer a minimum of 1 TB of storage. Their current storage sizes are unacceptable in 2022. Aside from lack of repairability and underwhelming starting storage, the last biggest complaint regarding Macs is their limited software. If you want to play games, for example, there's still no reason to get a Mac, and I don't think this will change anytime soon. Similarly, some high-end software like the Autodesk suite have yet to really be refined for Apple Silicon. However, unlike gaming, I think this can improve in the imminent future as software companies leverage iOS developers, but we'll just have to wait and see. While Macs do still have some shortfalls, I don't think these shortfalls will actually sway the average consumer that much. Like I said, the average consumer won't want to open up their computer anyway. So a lack of repairability/upgradability isn't that big of a deal, though it would be nice if Apple allowed for this. And in terms of software limitations, most people will mainly just spend their time doing work and browsing through social media. And unless you're an architect or a 3D designer or something, the software limitations wouldn't even apply to you. Something else to note is that all of these issues are relatively easy to fix. It's not that hard for Apple to bump up the starting storage or lighten up on the software restrictions that prevent upgrades. Recently, Apple has been a lot more open to feedback given that they brought back SD card slots, HDMI ports, and regular USB ports. So hopefully, they'll make these changes as well. If they do make these changes, I think Mac adoption will only accelerate moving forward, especially with the launch of the M2 chip. Now, I don't think Mac will ever become the dominant PC operating system, just like iOS will probably never become the dominant mobile operating system. However, I do think Apple can grow their PC market share closer to their mobile market share. Right now, Macs only account for about 10% of the global PC market, while iOS accounts for 28% of the global mobile market. Due to all the reasons outlined so far in this video, I think it's quite possible that over the next decade, Apple's market share in the PC market grows closer to 20%. This is quite odd for me to say actually, because I've always been a massive fan of Windows due to its versatility and customizability. The first videos on this YouTube channel are actually videos of me building my PC and discussing the GPU market. It wasn't until recently that I got my first Mac, and while I now have the option of using either Windows or Mac, I honestly don't think I'll be using my Windows computer that much moving forward because the Mac can do everything I need but better, faster, and smoother. And as more people give the M1 a shot, I think they'll come to the same conclusion. But that's just what I think. Are you guys Team Windows or Team Mac? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you think Apple killed it with the M1. And of course, consider checking out our international channels to watch our videos in other languages. And consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.